Hi, Katie.
Hi, Er-Gene. It's so great to have you for this Trillium Salon and this very new experience in this world we find ourselves in right now. I'm really super thrilled to highlight the works that you'll be playing. Maybe can you talk a little bit about the musicians that you'll be performing with and a little bit about what we're going to hear?
Absolutely. As you know, we are navigating a truly unprecedented time, especially with creative performers, interpretive performers who rely on live experiences, even as we've used technology. Being completely remote has severe limitations. And as many people have probably already seen through technology, we're trying as best as we can to create a sense of intimacy and a live performance with the tools or the limitations, depending on your interpretation that we have. And so thank you so much, Katie, again, for inviting me onto this platform. It's also been a great experience to try to put this quartet together that you guys will hear. My first venture into Premiere Pro. Not new for you and many others, but for me, I was quite resistant. So let's start with maybe the quartet first. It's just the first movement of Diabate, who is actually a new composer to me. And I think what's so amazing is the really strong narrative component of this quartet. The third movement, as you will see, features David Gerstein, our cellist, prominently, and he basically musically represents the protagonist of that movement. Each instrument is featured in each of the previous movements and the subsequent movements, and so the third movement, the kind of intermezzo in a way of this movement, features the cellist, who represents the sister of the protagonist. And it's kind of an intermezzo because I think it represents sort of the feminine power, which again is sort of a trope that you see in all narratives of a woman's power of seduction to kind of save the day, so to speak. It's basically about palace intrigue and a blacksmith warrior who tries to overtake a throne in the absence or to take advantage of weakness of an existing throne. And it's only through Nana Triban, who is the sister of the protagonist, in her powers of seduction, who is then able to kind of weasel out the vulnerability of this blacksmith sorcerer, who otherwise seems completely formidable and invincible to this throng of armies that the protagonist has been able to sort of assemble together. We basically built it from a technical perspective from David's line, not only because he's the protagonist in the movement, but he also represents obviously the bass line, the traditional bass line. The movement is in a three-part structure. So David opens and closes with a cadenza and then has this middle section that still features him prominently, with the rest of the quartet kind of providing accompaniment. It was really refreshing serving as first violinist, but being in a supporting role for this quartet. It's just really beautiful, and I have to thank Kronos 50 for the Future for making all this amazing repertoire available. And thank you, Katie, for talking about it,
Sure.
mentioning it.
Mention the other two people in the string quartet we'll be hearing from.
Mention the musicians. They are my friends who live in Little Rock and are ASO musicians. Katherine Williamson and David Gerstein are good friends of mine. We've known each other for at least 10 years, I think. Tim is actually new, a new member to ASO and also new to me. We've only actually met virtually, and it's been interesting to kind of talk about the fact of this virtual reality that we are now living in. Does it actually count as having met and collaborated with someone when it only has existed online? I mean, it's definitely real, it's definitely happened, but it's interesting to confront the limitations of working through a screen and working also not in real time, obviously, when you have to put a quartet together. But I really look forward to working with them. They were super easy to work with. And as always, I feel like how you work together as a group is always a great litmus for just how you view collaboration. So it's been wonderful, and I think we're looking forward to possibly putting together more movements, possibly of this quartet, possibly of others. I think the biggest thing that I know all musicians have to deal with is being stuck in a strict time. So the great thing about this was we were able to utilize the fact that David has a pretty free line and there's a clear hierarchical structure. David is clearly the leader. David is clearly the protagonist. This movement is clearly about the cello. But how would it work when there's a rubato where in live performances you would almost hope that every rendition would be different and you kind of celebrate improvisation? Definitely pre-recording things as a quartet presents a limitation.
And you're also performing a little bit of Florence Price. Tell us a little bit about the works that you're playing.
Yes, and thank you so much, Katie, for suggesting this. I always worry, I guess, if people will tire of hearing Florence Price. And, I'm of two minds. On the one hand, me being involved in her string music for at least now several years, I can use myself as a laboratory and say I have not tired of it. So I sort of think if I haven't tired of it, then I'm sure other people won't. And then I also start thinking about other equivalents, like in the string world, the Tchaikovsky violin concerto. How many times is that programmed in symphonies? How many times is that played on the radio? How many CDs or MP3 files do we own of something like the Tchaikovsky violin concerto? And I know there are many violinists who tire of that concerto, but it's still something that I find myself coming back to. And it doesn't have to be Tchaikovsky. It can be fill in the blank for your favorite violin concerto. And like a great book, like any great work of art, I find that each time I come back and revisit it, there's something new there for me. And certainly as a performing artist, I find that I perform it differently. My collaborator with this is Nathan Carterette, who is a schoolmate of mine from grad school. He has Arkansas ties, and that's kind of how we first came together in Arkansas before COVID. And of course, before that was our schooling. But to me, the last time I guess I had a chance to perform it, even though it wasn't with Nathan here, was through Trillium in 2018, I think, wasn't it? At Crystal Bridges. So I, had the recording that you helped me set up, the live recording, and I listened to that, I don't know, because I was getting nostalgic, maybe. I wanted to kind of remember these memories that I had in my mind with a little bit more vividness. And I was amazed, Katie, at how different it was. I mean, it's just a quote basic spiritual. It's not supposed to be complex music, and yet maybe it's that simplicity that allows for a lot of flexibility for musical choices and timings. And certainly, I find the intentionally simple nature of it to be a great vessel to explore, I guess, these conflicting feelings of what we're going through right now: uncertainty, melancholy, loneliness, hopes for a more stable and certain future, hopes for a better future. It was a really deep experience. Again, even though the whole taping of it was disembodied, I had to tape first, and then Nathan would sort of listen to my recording on his phone and record separately. Despite all of that, I found it really, really meaningful. So I find the revisiting of Florence Price and the constant revisiting certainly meaningful, but also in this new rendition of social isolation and live performances via technology to be also actually pretty meaningful. I feel like 2020 will be the year that we never forget, but it's also the year that sort of got away from us all.
Wow. Well, this is so exciting. Thank you so much for that intro about the pieces, and let's take a listen. Let's experience them.
up some Er-Gene here. This is like take 1,000. Okay, hold on. I keep dropping the music or something goes wrong. Okay.
Thank you so much, Er-Gene. That was amazing. And what a
Thank you.
To be like you mentioned before the performance. You're not really you're not in this playing in the same room together, and you're not even actually playing at the same time. But this is a performance, and also you can perform basically with musicians who are not in the same place as you. So it's kind of cool like that. What I mean, how are you getting? Have you started feeling like you're getting used to that kind of way of performing in an ensemble, or is it still really weird?
It's definitely weird and new. I was definitely able to benefit from the fact that I knew these musicians as friends and colleagues, so I definitely knew their style, I guess, and they know, and vice versa, they know my style, they know sort of the common musical choices that I might make. And with the case with Nathan and I, we've performed these spirituals now together in several different settings. So I feel that I had a lot of liberty to kind of not intentionally throw musical curveballs. You know, if I took a little bit more time than I used to in a certain section, I didn't have a sense that it would derail things. The quartet relied a bit on metronome sort of markings to kind of put us together, but the spirituals actually were recorded completely without metronome. So there were times when I even surprised myself and I thought, I actually took less time than I intended to, or vice versa, I actually took more time than I intended to. So it was a great experience for me being part of both worlds, where I was in some ways straitjacketed a bit by the metronome, but also held securely because of the metronome, and also obviously when that was not in place and I was allowed to roam free. The last thing that I've noticed about these remote recordings is that it really made me confront the idea of memory. Like I said, because I was able to benefit from previous renditions of these performances, which I had done live, especially with the Florence Price, not so much obviously with the Diabate. Those live performances were with other repertoire. It really forced me to kind of think about not only the music and obviously be constrained in some cases with the metronome or previous performances, but also my collaborators. Maybe it sounds a bit creepy, but I did spend some time thinking about what would Nathan want here, or what would Nathan do? And there are some sections in the spirituals, for example, where there are piano interludes. I really had to imagine what Nathan would do, based on, of course, past performances, but also based on what I thought I was giving to him in the recording. And so I really had to anticipate, and in some cases assume, what I was conveying and what he would bring back to me. So it's weird and a vulnerable experience, because it's kind of like talking into a black screen, you know, talking into a device that obviously won't respond back. But at the same time, I don't know, it's also a very poetic experience for me, because it's kind of like when you're trying to write a letter to someone, you know, a handwritten letter. Who does that anymore, right? But you're trying to imagine a conversation that may take place a week later.
And maybe let's a bit about, you like to champion underserved composers, maybe composers who aren't household names. You mentioned before the performance you felt like, well, maybe people are tiring of Florence Price, because we have seen this great resurgence of performing of her works and continue to be. There's a festival in August happening celebrating her work, so it's pretty amazing. But maybe talk a little bit about why it's important to find these underserved composers and let more people know about them, and a little bit about why this is one of your missions.
I think people often, well, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I often forget the power of representation. I forget the power of representation that can happen in all facets of life, and especially now being in a technology-saturated world, the kind of representation and realities of the world that we live in that get formed in our minds through technology, through media, through the movies, through books, apart from just our day-to-day real, concrete, lived-in experiences. And again, speaking for myself, how else will we know the things that have happened before our lifetime? other than the accounts of history that have been told through us through elders or through schooling or through history books, history lessons, and how much of that gets written by sort of the winners of the conquerors of any region, any timeline, and then the realities get quite skewed, I think, where we are then presented with this unilateral reality, which may not actually ring true for a large population of people. And so I think music tends to be in two camps, where we tend to be staunchly apolitical in the sense that we want to believe that music is timeless, especially classical music. And that because we don't have, usually with instrumental, we don't have words attached